Hello and welcome to the Holding It Together Kinda podcast. I'm your host, Michael Macniak. Here we will get real in our conversations about chronic health issues, mental illness, and caregiving, and the messy reality of keeping it all balanced. No sugarcoating, no clinical jargon, just real talk about the hospitalizations, the medication battles, and the toll it takes on a home. This is for the parents, siblings, the partners who do the impossible every single day. Holding It Together Kinda is a home for the overthinkers, the multitaskers, and anyone who feels like they're one spilled coffee away from a meltdown. Find us on YouTube at HitKinda, HITKINDA, and subscribe, like, follow, comment, vent, throw rocks, or whatever you need to do, but do it today. Welcome back to Holding It Together Kinda. I'm your host as usual, Michael Macniak. If you've spent any time navigating the world of mental health or social services, you've probably heard the phrase, no wrong door. It's actually a real beautiful policy concept, right? It's the idea that no matter where a family in crisis enters the system, they will be greeted with warm handoff and given the right resources. It's a promise that the system is designed to catch you, not confuse you. But let's be honest, for most families, no wrong door feels like no right door. Or worse, you find yourself standing in front of a brick wall where a door used to be. You're told the door is there, but your hand never finds the latch or the handle. So in reality, when the front door is deadbolted, you stop looking for a formal entrance. You start looking for an open window to crawl through just to get the basic help your loved one needs. This brings us to what I call the loop of despair. It's a sequence of events that most of you probably unfortunately have seen by heart. It starts with, the phone call, the first phone call where you braved it up and you said, hey, I'm going to make this call. You get a 3-month wait. Then you get an intake meeting and then you're told, oh no, that's not our department. It's like that with so many things in the world. Then you're given another phone number and another quote-unquote vetted list of resources that hasn't been updated since 2019, and this cycle starts all over for you. So this isn't just a bureaucratic glitch, it's a tax on your soul. Any family would give up, not because they don't care, but because they're physically, emotionally exhausted by the runaround. The thesis today is simple, but it's just the hard truth. We're told that a system is a safety net. As usual, I say this. In reality, it also becomes a labyrinth. If you treat yourself as a visitor in this system, if you're waiting for a guide to show you the way, you will stay lost. Today, we're going to talk about how to stop being a visitor and start becoming the manager of the system that you are in. We're going to discuss how to escalate your needs up the food chain, how to find the back doors, and how to stop knocking on the locked doors and start finding the open windows. Okay, so that's our introduction, and this is a complicated topic because, well, for a lot of reasons. It's we have a lot of people who are trying to get into a system that is through no fault of its own. It's backlogged. There's a lot of people. Resources are very difficult to come by, and we have to spread them out accordingly and according to need, and it's tough. I will say, and I want Sarah to talk about this because we get many, many, many phone calls in our office. Sarah, why don't you just open up and talk about that? How many
Yeah.
people are calling our office?
So we probably get a good 5 solid phone calls a week from family members who have tried to open the door, and for whatever reason, the door does not, it's jammed, it's locked, it's whatever. And so we end up spending probably a good solid hour each phone call, trying to listen to the story, because it's always important to listen to, like, what has been tried. And if we can help, we certainly do help, or trying to give them real numbers and real people that work, and even sending follow-up emails to the people that we're sending the info, that we're sending them to. I think the issue is that you have family members who are already exhausted because they're, have been living this, for however long. and there's finally hope that there's going to be a system or service that's going to help them. And number one, it's sometimes hard to get the person to the intake, right? Sometimes it's hard to get some of our clients to the intake. That's like a monumental feat. And then when you call the number and you're said, oh, well, we have a wait list, or oh, we might not be the right agency for you, it just becomes super discouraging. And so we get those phone calls of, we've already tried this, we've already tried that, our person's in crisis and we need help. Um, so it's very heartbreaking and frustrating at the same time, because this isn't how the system should work. And I don't think this isn't how the system is intended to work. So I,
No, and no, and in the interest of full disclosure, I mean, in certain areas that we service, we have a wait list.
mhm,
There's only so much love to go around, as they say.
mhm.
So there is that issue. And interestingly, depending on the work that you're doing and the business that you're in, um, like for us, we've developed alliances across the service systems, um, which lead us to not only getting these phone calls from families who are looking for assistance, but we're also getting phone calls from other agencies. We're even getting phone calls from state agencies looking for us to maybe have an answer that they hadn't thought of. So I guess my point in all of this is that it's not unusual. And I think that that's an important thing with this entire concept of the holding together kind of podcast, is to let families know that this this messy, sometimes icky journey that you feel like you're stuck on, you are not alone. There are lots of people out there. You can come here and listen to us. You can go and talk to other people in our communities, or people that you know, and you could probably get some answers of how people on this journey have done it before. But Stephanie, does it feel to you like this no wrong door concept is for real? Does it feel like it fails spectacularly for families who are actually looking for help?
I mean, I think it can. There is no wrong door to try, but getting it open is hard. I mean, you call, or you getting calls back? Is there a wait list? Are you following up once, as that wait list goes, or it's kind of a put them on the wait list, forget about it, move on to the next. I think it's very challenging to find something that's appropriate for certain clients and getting somewhere, right? So a lot of our clients work with DEMIS, and I hear the acute hospitals making referrals to DEMIS and getting them in that door. But we don't always hear about the clients that are on the units that maybe aren't appropriate for DEMIS, or don't ever get through that door of starting to work with them to access all these resources. And they're put back into the community with kind of the family to pick up the pieces and continue to work on getting them what they need to get to a more stable place. So I could see it being a very frustrating process. And as Sarah's point too, with the calls we get in our office, I've had numerous family members asking questions about another family member or a friend that has a loved one that needs services, like just looking for guidance or to point them in the right direction numerous times. And I don't always get the follow up on how those suggestions went or where they are now, but I could just imagine, their pure desperation at that point, and looking for some answers from anybody because they're probably not getting them in other
Yeah, don't you
areas.
wish sometimes you would just get a phone call back and said, "Hey, thanks, man. That really helped." Actually,
Yeah,
it's
sometimes we
nice.
do. Sometimes we do.
Yeah, I
Sometimes we
got one
do,
this
but
week.
like in the interactions where you meet people, like I actually, one of my clients had passed away, and I went to his funeral and the bereavement kind of lunch, and there was somebody I was sitting across from that was just picking my brain about their loved one. I did give them my contact information, never heard from them again. So,
Yeah.
I don't know where it went from there, but to be in a setting like that and just to ask me, I could understand, I could assume that at that point she was probably like didn't know where to go from there.
I
Yeah,
just,
yeah.
I,
I think that one thing I wanted to point out, Sarah, I'm sorry. Um, Stephanie mentions DEMIS. In our parlance, that means the Department of Mental Health, everybody. So DEMIS to us is Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services. We call it DEMIS all the time. So what were you going to say, Sarah? I'm sorry.
so I just want to add, though, I think I want to give Connecticut specifically kudos for the initiatives that Connecticut has tried to put in place. Like Michael and I have traveled all over the country, and I feel like Connecticut has top-notch mental health services. And the initiatives that Connecticut has tried to put in place are pretty, I think, pretty innovative in trying to catch folks in that safety net. So, like, one of the things was the first episode of psychosis. So you can call this number if your child was having a first episode of psychosis between a certain age range, and they would fast track that person into services. Another thing is the hospitals. We're trying to hire navigators so that, like Stephanie was saying, once you're in the hospital or the ER, the client falls in the crack and, it never makes it to the referral. And so these navigators are supposed to be following people through. I think the issue becomes with system overload, and I know we're going to get there, is these are great ideas in theory, but if they're not consistent in the practice or the information is not out there to the general public, and everybody's not promoting it, then it just leads into this web of confusion. And that's what I've seen. So when families call me, I say, did you know we're doing this? Did you know we're doing this in Connecticut? And they had no idea.
Yeah, I think that you touched on this concept of systematic or institutional culture that needs to be pervasive. And unfortunately, in some places it's not, and that goes to consistency and it goes to commitment, which I also want to mention here in a few minutes. But we have this overlap here with two different systems of care. They're the same system of care, but they operate very differently. So we have our hospital settings, and we also have our outpatient community-based service systems. And again, I want to say that these people do a good job. They really care. They really want to do the job that they're supposed that they spent their lives, their careers, their education, setting themselves up for. Um, but sometimes you definitely feel, and this maybe not be so true with the smaller agencies, but sometimes you definitely get a sense that there's this kick the can mentality. We can't handle it here. Go see this guy. And then you go see that guy and says, go see that guy. And you kick the can down the road, kick the can down the road. So that's one side of it. The other side of it is the concept of these discharge plans that are not really well thought out. They're not really cohesive, and they're not navigated or coordinated by us or the hospital navigators that I really hope works, and I really hope they implement some of the things that we've created for the last 25 years or however long it's been. Because I do think that there are a lot of discharge gaps. Uh, One of the things I mentioned in the opener there is this idea that when a person's being discharged, hopefully they're going to be discharged to a team of providers in the community. But as Stephanie indicated, that is not always the case. They're going to be discharged right back to home, and mom and dad are sitting there saying, "Oh, what now? Oh, good, they gave us a list of people to call." This allegedly vetted list of resources that they're handed. And I'm not trying to pick on hospitals or hospital social workers, but this is a reality. This happens in all kinds of big institutions. Well, that list hasn't been updated. So you go down these dead ends. I was looking for something yesterday. The business was completely it didn't exist. It was completely out of business. So what about these hospital or discharge gaps? Not necessarily even just from hospitals. When you have people that you're meeting for the first time in the communities, because this is what you guys are doing that I'm not doing, okay? And this is why this topic is complicated for me. So I'm going to learn from you guys as much as the audience is going to learn from you about what the realities are. When families are given these numbers, Sarah, do they ever result in a home run and in a hit the first time you're making a phone call?
I think it depends. And again, I think it depends on who's on the other end of that phone. So again, I know we touched upon this in previous episodes, but when you're calling, get the person on the other end of that phone interested in what you have to say, because you're one of 200 people maybe that they've talked to that month with similar stories and similar, things going on. And so, unfortunately, you have to get people interested, right? Um, so I think sometimes it does, but I think a lot of times because the system is overloaded, what you're gonna hear if there's a wait list is, we have a wait list, here's another agency. And again, after you get to the third agency, you're pretty much given up. You know,
Yeah,
it,
unfortunately. And guys, just so you know, to our listening audience, there are meetings every single week among these groups of providers. So in one city, one catchment area, let's say, you will have all the providers theoretically, as many as can get there on a weekly basis. And they get together and they have this utility management meeting where they discuss what openings they have, what openings they don't have, so that they can share with each other. Um, we're ready to take on new clients. We're not ready to take on new clients. This does happen behind the scenes. It may seem like it doesn't to a lot of people who are hitting this brick wall, but these things are going on. Stephanie, if you were a family or you got this list of people to call, so if I hand you a list of quote unquote vetted resources, what would be the questions you would have back to me, or what would be the first question that you should ask the people who are these alleged resources?
Asking back to you who handed me the list.
Yeah, or even what would be the first question to that alleged perfect fit resource?
Oh, I would probably first ask, do you have any openings? When can you take this person? And then go into like the history and everything. Also who is most recommended. Sometimes I feel like you're given a list of 20 resources, and like you said, it could be outdated. Do they still have funding? Are they still open? Are they still highly recommended? Hands change over years, and the experience that people have with them may change as well. But I think as if I was in sheer desperation, I would want to move through that list as quickly as possible. So probably my first question would be, do you have openings? How quickly can you take my loved one? And if it's a year out, maybe I'll call back and you move on to the next. Because I wouldn't want to sit there and tell the same story over and over and over again just to be at the very end and be told, oh,
it's
our wait list is a year long. To me, that
Yeah.
seems like if I'm that urgent in trying to get services, that would be a waste of my time.
the
Yeah,
other
and that urgency that the family feels. This is another thing that I have to stick up for the service system on. You know, when we go to you, when we family members go to the service system and ask for help for our child, that is the most pressing issue, the most important file in the world. Nothing else should or could take precedent over that phone call. Unfortunately, reality is that the agency that you're calling has 1,000 of those people whose family members all think it is the most important case. It is the most pressing issue. Um, I don't know if you guys can hear my dog barking at nothing. And that's a hard one for us family members to accept and to think about and to realize that wow, there are a lot of other people out there. And if there's one lesson to take away from a lot of these podcasts is just that there's a lot of people going through the same thing that you're going through. You're not alone on the journey. um did you want to say something with Stephanie's points
Yes.
there?
Yeah, I just wanted to say one thing in terms of like a tip of the trade. I know we give little tips along the way. If the person is inpatient, it is more than appropriate for you to be asking the social worker to make the the appointment to wherever they're referring to. So if they're referring to a nonprofit, if they're referring to a state agency, it is more than appropriate for you to say, I need you to make this appointment, within the week. So that's one thing. The other thing, in terms of like, getting services. And I really feel like parents, family members, sisters, brothers of these adult loved ones need to do the homework and figure out what their best agency request is going to be. For instance, some of the hospital programs that are intensive outpatient programs, IOPs, they don't offer case management. They're going to offer med management. They're going to offer therapy in groups. If your loved one needs case management, you need to vet some of these agencies and do the homework online and find out what services these agencies offer. Then,
Well,
then
and we're going to get
advocate
to
for the
that for
one you
sure.
want. Right. But then advocate for the one you want instead of looking at the 10. So unfortunately, some of this is going to fall on, doing your homework and
Well, I
figuring
don't think that there's anything wrong with saying that. I don't think it's unfortunate at all. I think we all have things that we need to do, and we need to take the onus upon ourselves in life, and this is part of it. And it's an unfortunate part that none of us ever asked for, and yet here we are. And we've gotta pull ourselves up by the bootstraps sometimes. I think that's fair. I love your point though about when you have an inpatient setting going on. I've gone through this with my family of late. With an aunt who was hospitalized, and the social workers kept pushing on her sister
it.
to, you got to get her a place, you got to get her a place, you got to get her a place. And my social worker friends, my hospital-based social worker friends are going to, or case manager friends are going to hate me for this, but their job is to help you to find appropriate resources while you have an inpatient setting going on. The only other thing I wanted to add to what Stephanie was saying is, when you're handed this list by that social worker or whomever in the hospital or an inpatient setting or even an outpatient setting, I would ask the person handing me the list, have you worked with these guys? Do you like them? And here's a good one. Who do you know there that I could reach out to? Because people love to be, whether we want to admit it or not, we love to be contacted and asked for help. It makes us feel good about ourselves and our ability to help other people. Don't be afraid to ask. That's one of the hardest things for people to overcome, is this idea of asking for help when you need it. And what you find is that there's a lot of people out there that are just waiting to be asked. They've got their hand up. They're waiting to be called on. What's the, I don't know if I want to hear horror stories necessarily, but what is the taxation that this puts on a family, Sarah? What have you seen in terms of, Stephanie said it, we just give up, you know?
Well, I think we see a lot of hopelessness where sometimes I'll get someone on the phone and I'll say, okay, let's try this. And they'll say, well, I already tried that. And so every resource that I give them, they've already tried. So they've just given up. And so I'll have to redirect them and say, oh no, you haven't called this person yet. Call this person. So I think what people also forget is, as they're in the throes of it, that there are people, like you just said, Michael, that really do want to help. So if you get an intake worker who really could give you no time at all, I think the higher ups would like to know that. And I'll give you a perfect example. I had a client who was trying to access substance abuse resources, inpatient and or residential. And the person that was helping them try to find a bed, what kept hearing, "Oh, we don't take people who are conserved. We don't take people who are conserved," which is the furthest thing from the truth, right? So
It doesn't make any sense at all.
right. So if you're a family member and you're hearing, "Oh, we don't do this," but it says it on their website, um, it behooves you to call the next person higher up, or even the highest person, the CEO. So I know for a fact that this particular agency that she was referring to, one of them, that the CEO would be mortified if he heard the intake person say that. So I reached out and let them know.
Yeah, of
So
course you did.
of course I did, because we all have to hold our systems accountable. I would want to know if one of my workers was saying something that was not accurate. But how many times does the CEO not know what the ground people, the boots on the ground people are saying? It happens. It has happened here. So it happens. So, when you see something, say something. But yeah, that would be a family member who would just say, "Oh, they don't take conserved individuals," or, "Oh, they don't take, my person. So let me, move on to the next." And sometimes that's not always the best solution, is to move on to the next. Sometimes it's to, you know,
I think that you mentioned something else where we have a family member. Let's say they've done their work. They've gotten their list. They've gone out. They've done more research, and they found other agencies and services that may be appropriate. And they've called and they've taken tactic A when they call, and they get shut down. No, no. And then very often they call us and we'll say, okay, you tried tactic A, but better way to address this, to try tactic B. And that happens a lot with our agency in particular, and a lot of other professionals who are doing this kind of work are saying, yeah, A isn't really the way that they want to go here. If you hit their soft spot, their soft white underbelly is B, go with B. And that's practice, but it's also like stick to itiveness. Don't give up on it.
Mhm.
Stephanie, I'm dancing around something here because I don't want to necessarily come out and say it, but I'm going to see if you say it so I don't have to. Okay, you ready for it?
Sure.
I'm setting you right up.
Okay.
How stacked do you think the cards are against people who are not, or in favor of people who are not in crisis versus the crisis cases?
Mm.
I think that you have a lot more pull when you are in a crisis situation.
Really?
Honestly, I do. Some depending,
Well,
depending.
that's no, that's nice. That's actually nice to hear because I think the exact opposite.
So I
Because I'm
feel like
cynical.
the clients that are in crisis in the moment get the attention in that moment. So obviously, the resources we have, the mobile crisis, you get them to the hospital. There's a lot more that can be done with a client that's inpatient and in the hospital versus in the community. We run into that all the time. A lot of opportunities we try to jump on for certain clients we do while they're in the hospital because you don't have either the client's willingness or the system in place to do it when they're in the community. So sometimes I feel like the clients in crisis might get a little further than the quote unquote, getting by clients that are still having the mental health issues, still need more supports, but are not like forwardly in crisis that people are giving all their attention to. And that's just my opinion.
But no, it's
I
and
agree
you
with
and you
Stephanie.
backed it up with you backed it up with great anecdotal evidence. I and Sarah will remember this case. This is from oh man, ages ago, 20 almost 25 years ago probably, where I really went apoplectic on an agency that I thought was cherry picking the easy clients. So in my mind, again, my cynical side is always winning out, and that war between the two sides. My cynical side is what comes to the front. That's why you guys are good at what you do, and I'm good at what I do, I suppose. But I don't like this concept where I feel like people are cherry picking. They want to deal with the easy clients and not deal with the hard clients. And I'm happy to hear that you and it's not always a matter of holy cow, this is a crisis right now, we need to fly into action. I think sometimes the crisis can be the alarm that the system needed to say, oh wow, we really should have been doing a different plan all along, let's implement that plan. And I think that I hope that that's part of it. I'm sorry I interrupted you as usual, Sarah.
Oh no, I interrupted you, so you know that's my style.
I'm used to that.
So I just wanted to piggyback on what Stephanie's saying. To me, I mean, that's my experience too, but it also is a mixed bag of feelings for me because sometimes the folks in crisis are getting the attention because we're, as a system, at all of us, when we're overloaded, we're reactive instead of proactive. And so I think, it's great in the moment, we're getting, things moving, but wouldn't it be nice if we, when we saw the writing on the wall a couple weeks ago, if we could put in some approaches that would be proactive, that would not lead to ER. And then, so again, I feel like it's kind of a double-edged sword sometimes.
It is. It's two sides of the same coin.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the third side of that coin, I want to get to now when we talk about system overload, because you've mentioned system overload a couple of times. Okay. Welcome to our system overload segment where we talk about the clinical need exceeding the infrastructure's capacity. We're looking at the blown fuses, the revolving door discharges, the 400-mile record gaps and data blackouts. This is where we stop asking how the patient is doing and ask more about why the big machine is glitching, why the machine is breaking down for that particular patient. So, following through with Sarah's analogy, we have the people who are in crisis getting care, the people who are not in crisis getting care. I don't even know how to say this right, but we're responding in reactive mode to acute moments of crisis very often. We all of us do it in every single facet of our lives. It's no different in big caregiving service systems. Okay. Um, the other side of that coin is when you have this system that's almost effectively waiting for the catastrophe to happen before they'll act,
Yeah.
or the system that says, or you're stuck somewhere in the middle between those two sides of the coin. You're on the edge of the coin. You're saying, well, my loved one is just good enough to stay in the community, or they're just too sick or disorganized to go into this program. That is abundantly frustrating for people. And we've seen it. Can you talk about that a little bit, Sarah?
Yeah, so I mean, we have a case right now that we're working on right now. We had to push, push, push to get the person inpatient. He is not doing well and not on his baseline. Um, and then the hospital doesn't know him, and so they say, "Oh, he's great," and then our worker goes up and he's not great. And we have a bed for him in a residential substance abuse treatment program, but now the hospital doesn't want to wait for the bed. And so what we're going to end up doing, and again, this is very reactive. So the hospital's going to discharge him. He's gonna, have a rough time a go of it again. We're gonna try to get him back in and hope that they keep him for the bed. I mean, and if we just did the proactive approach, which is work together, wait the week, get him in the bed,
Yeah.
how much trauma would it save him, right? And how much more effective would it be in the long run? Because, in the long run, he just needs a little bit of time, right?
We should talk about that, not today, but in another episode, I think, about the realities that Medicaid forces our hospitals into, the realities, the hospital beds and the pressure that they feel to move people on, as well as the doctors and their professional ethics and things like that. I think those are important topics that you bring up here, and we should consider that along these lines. But um, one of the things that you did mention that here comes a shameless plug. When you use a tool like our caregiver app or our care navigator journal, it really helps the staff in the facilities to understand what a true baseline for the individual is. I was talking to a friend last night, and she says she has a young son. Well, he's 24 now, but he's severely autistic and he has medical issues. And she says she actually has videos that she keeps as part of what she calls her letter of intent, quote
Yeah,
unquote. And she shows how her son is this happy-go-lucky kid who
yeah,
likes to sing dirty songs just to get her eyes out of people and things like this. And it's fun, it's funny, but it shows that this here's what he's really like.
yeah,
Yes, hospital, you think this guy is good, and we've seen this a million times where it's no,
yeah,
this is not baseline. Trust me, this is
yeah,
not baseline. Because I use this analogy a lot where I used my bathtub analogy that you've probably heard a million times where if we have a bathtub that's full of water and and somebody takes the drain out and it goes down, a quarter of the way, well, we could turn on resources and get that water level back up pretty readily. It's when the tub gets drained and is completely empty that it's hard to get things filled back up again. And that's the baseline. If you think of the water line as the baseline of people operating, we don't want them to get to the empty tub. We want to be able to keep them in a place near baseline. Baseline is good in a lot of ways. And I'm not saying that we should rest at baseline, but baseline is where we all function.
yeah.
Steph, did you want to add anything to this? I and if not, that's fine too. I think that this is important because we're not always going to wait for catastrophe to open doors, right?
No, I don't think so, but I think in certain circumstances we are put in a position where we have to. To Sarah's point too, I've talked about this client before, but the one that we're trying to get into a state hospitalization because her level of care in the community is not
Yeah.
appropriate and she continues to go into acute hospitals and we're just waiting for the correct decompensation to do
Yeah,
it.
yeah. Right.
which
That's what it
it
feels
just doesn't
like.
feel good to continue to
Right.
do that because it's traumatizing for the client, and it's exhausting to continue to do over and over and over again. And there have been times that she has gone to hospitals that are not her typical hospital because of bed availability, which is even more difficult because they don't know her, they don't know the struggles we've all gone through. So they're kind of cleaning her up, stabilizing her, discharging her quicker than the other one even would. At least they're open to
Yeah.
conversations, but it doesn't feel good to me putting her back into the community and just saying, okay, let's see how long, until she decompensates again, and maybe this is our time. So in that circumstance, we do wait for crises to happen
And
to
I love
get
what you
kind of
said there.
what
It's
we
like
feel is appropriate.
we're waiting for the right type of crisis or the right type
Yes.
of catastrophe. And
Yes.
that's right. You're absolutely right. And that brings us back to what Sarah's point was about waiting for the next time this guy does the same thing so that we can involuntarily commit him under the statutes. Um, yeah, waiting for the next time around, being sure that there is going to be a next time around. Unfortunately, that's a horrific place to be.
Well, of
But
course, that's the big thing for me. It just doesn't feel good because I know it's
Right.
coming. I don't know when, and I don't know even if that's so at the right time when it actually like happens and we're able to follow that all through. Could be 50 times from now. I'm not saying it's the next time. It could be way far down the road, and
I-
yeah,
that's
And I,
the sad part.
and I just want to add too that during those times of crisis, you got to jump on it. Whether you're the family member or if there's providers that are listening out there right now, you got to jump on it. You can't wait. You can't say, "Oh, okay, they're in the ER." No, you have to call and plead the story because that again, whoever is looking at that person is looking at one moment in time. And so if you don't jump on it, it's going to be another missed opportunity. And I know like Stephanie for this person, she jumps on it every single time. She gets the whole team to jump on it. And then when they go inpatient, if you're lucky enough, if they need inpatient and you're lucky enough to get the hospital to agree, go up to the unit, take a look at them. Don't wait for the day of discharge when the team has already made up their mind. Be a participant in the process because it's going to be
from
short.
the
Yeah, it's
from
going
the
to be
get-go.
short. It's going to be short. So get up there
Yeah.
and be a part of the team.
I think that very often what happens, I've spoken about this in talks I've given around the country. I think a lot of times what happens for all of us that are in the system, including the family member, is when there is a moment of crisis, let's say, that leads to an emergency room visit, that leads to hospitalization,
Yeah.
many families and many providers in the community say, "Woo,
It's an
okay,
exhale. It's an
now
exhale.
I could take a breather
Right.
here. I could take a step back and I could take a rest." That is not the time to take a rest. This is the time
No
to
time.
rally the troops and
Yes.
Yeah.
figure out what plan B is
Yeah,
going to be.
that's right.
But and this goes to the concept of burnout. It goes to family burnout. It goes to caregiver burnout, and it's a very real thing. We'll get back to our conversation in just a minute, but I want to take a second to talk about something that many of us in this community deal with every single day, and that's the mental load of caregiving. If you're like me, your brain is probably filled with appointment dates, medication schedules, and a never-ending list of questions for doctors. It's exhausting trying to keep it all in your head while also trying to show up emotionally for the person you love. That's exactly why the team at the Care Coalition created the Care Navigator Journal. This is not just another notebook. It's a tool specifically designed to help you to stay organized and, more importantly, to help you feel a little more in control when things start feeling really chaotic. It gives you a dedicated space to track medical updates, manage daily tasks, and even process your own thoughts. Imagine such a thing. Your well-being matters just as much as the person that you're caring for. If you're feeling overwhelmed and looking for a way to stay organized, I highly recommend picking one up. You can find it right now at www.carecoalition.org/holding it together. Again, that's carecoalition.org/holding it together. It's a small way to start holding it all together, one page at a time. All right, let's get back to the show. hate to think, well, Sarah, do you ever think that this burn or the lack of response that families feel that they receive is due to burnout and just, I just don't have the bandwidth to be able to respond?
I think it depends on each family. I think some families are taxed. Like, so for instance, if you're a sister and you're trying to get your loved one, you're a sister or brother services, and you got a whole family that you're that you're caring for, your level of energy that you can give to something like this, it may be limited. So I think for each family, it's probably a little bit different. Because for some families, they want to help, but there's not enough hours in the day. For some families, they will stay on the phone all day long and burn themselves out, and that leads to fatigue and a different kind of exhaustion. So I think it's all
Well,
individualized.
and there's different types of people, I mean, my
Right.
patience level is so low and I will just fly off the handle.
Yeah.
But I was asking Stephanie, what I really wanted to know from Sarah, and that was great. I'm glad you answered it the way you did because that's an important factor that I hadn't considered. But I was wondering, Steph, what about the idea of the providers and these agencies and the
Mhm.
burnout that they're feeling? Do you feel like sometimes a lack of response is because of the burnout in the agencies themselves and the care workers?
I feel like you can. Like, I feel like we all kind of have rough weeks where things are going awry, every which way for numerous other clients. I also kind of feel like that crisis conversation we were talking about before comes into play for this too. I have a caseload of 32 clients. So if client 1 through 4 is really in crisis situation, someone calls me with number 5, where's my priority at that point? Like, I'm going to do my best to do everything, but there are sometimes clients that are really need the attention, the immediate attention, and yours might take a back burner with that provider or clinical team. And I think everybody tries to do the best they can, but we are only one person, one system. There's only so much time in a day to get stuff done, and unfortunately, things do get set aside and kind of prioritized when all of that's coming at you at once. I'd love to have one client in the hospital at a time, but that's not always what's happening.
Right. Yeah. Think about it that from that perspective, folks. As Stephanie just brought this, I'd love to have only one client in the hospital at a time, but that's not our reality. And folks that are out there listening, you don't want to have your loved one in the hospital ever. So, a lot of these providers, including our office and our staff, has multiple people in the hospital. How do you think families can insulate themselves from this idea of uh, we're not in crisis, therefore we're not top priority. So, what do you
I
think
have an
about
answer
that?
to that. I have a good answer to that.
I,
So
yeah, I know. I
yeah,
think I know where you're going
because
too.
I love the systems issues. I love trying to make the systems better. Like that's one of my passions, and it's one of the reasons that I love this agency so much. So a, a fair solution is, like Stephanie said, you're going to have workers that are going to have some workers out there in the mental health field have 60 cases that they're working on at any given time. So you're going to have weeks where maybe that worker that you're working with isn't going to get back to you right away. I think if that's not the consistent thing, I think you work with the worker. I think you really try to work with the worker. Stephanie has excellent relationships with all of her conservators and family members, and they all sing her praises. So if she's having an off week, that's all it is an off week, and she circles back. If you have an apathetic worker, and I like to use that word because I see a lot of apathy sometimes in social work, not just in mental health, but apathy all over, in terms of it's just you're burnt out, you're tired,
Yeah.
if
I have zero F's to give about this right
okay,
now.
right. But
You
right.
know?
But if you see consistent apathy, you're calling, you're not getting a call back, the worker saying they're going to do something and they never follow through. That's a time to bring in the supervisor because I know like when I get calls, I join, I'm on the team. So the supervisors are also on the team. And so I think bringing in the next level isn't a bad thing. It's maybe, another eyes to what's going on.
Yeah, you are. I just Knew you were going to go there.
I know.
And that's the very first topic that I've identified in our cracks segment when we talk about the cracks in our systems. As you've seen, we often talk about this concept of a safety net. But now I want to look at the cracks. This is our segment that we call the cracks. These are the invisible lines where families lose their voice and patients lose their way, from rigid privacy barriers that prevent or isolate loved ones to financial abysses, which are always halting progress. We're asking, why are these gaps here and who is falling through them? In this segment, we stop looking at the person who fell and start inspecting the holes in the floor that they were forced to walk upon. One of the things that I wanted to add to what Sara just said in terms of giving your worker a break sometimes, and because they could have a bad week too, and what really helps people stay in the forefront of the mind with regard to their loved one's cases, becoming an ally to the workers that are on your case. Be their friend, number one. Um, and guys, another cliche I use all the time, the squeaky wheel does not get the grease in this world. Don't be the pain in the ass, because the pain in the ass squeaky wheel gets shoved to the side, put in the back of the garage, and never gets fixed. I'm sorry, that's the truth. You need to become an ally, and more importantly, and we're going to talk about that here today, become a valued and respected and important member of the team of advocates and caregivers for your loved one. So while I knew that Sara was going to go to the idea of going up the food chain, which is exactly what you just said, um, there's a few ways to do that. So I guess the first question then, Stephanie, is how do you go up the food chain? Because you can't always find the phone numbers of the supervisors or things, right? So that may not be so easy. How do you talk to, well, I mean, you don't have to tell your clients how to do this. You do it for them. So what do you do?
So the easy ones, normally it's in the voicemail, right? If you can't get me, call my supervisor. Here you go.
And at Guardian, we always include the supervisor
Yes, and there
on
are
all
other
the
agencies that
voicemails.
do the same thing
Yeah.
too. It'll leave their supervisor's phone
Careful
numbers.
what you wish for.
Yeah. So
Non-step. Listen, Stephanie's wonderful, so I don't have to worry about anybody calling her
yeah,
supervisor.
nobody's calling my supervisors. Don't worry,
No,
Michael.
never.
But that's the easy one, right? So, and I think also with us, we are very well established with the services, like the agencies we work with, so we kind of know the food chains. You can go on the websites, you can call the front desk and ask for a supervisor, a director. If they're on a hospital unit, can I speak with the nursing director? Can I speak, just using the right terminology to get kind of who you want. Like whoever is overseeing this case, or like a director or something like that. I would be my go-to majority of the time. I do like to have give people a chance to call me back before kind of going around them. But sometimes you need an answer in a very timely manner, especially if they're at the hospital. I don't have the time to wait until next week for you to get back to me. That client might be discharged before I know it, and then my opportunity is gone. So just calling like the different numbers, seeing who you can get, and if you do get somebody that happens to answer the phone, ask who you could speak to. That's the highest person on the team. Just doesn't hurt to ask.
No, no, it doesn't hurt to ask, and you're absolutely right. There's a lot of different ways to go about it. I think that people have a reticence and a fear of of kicking things up. And by the way, you don't just do this because you're impatient.
Right.
Nobody likes it when you go over their head. Nobody likes it when you go behind their back. But
Right.
Stephanie just brought up a great example. We have a client who is in the hospital right now. I can't wait for you to get back from your 2-day vacation. I got to kick this up. I got to talk to somebody. We got to move this now, because if we don't, we're going to lose opportunities. The alcohol and drug statute's a perfect example that Sara brought up earlier. We have a bed that's coming available next week. Can you wait? Can you work with us? and that's an example that we see a lot that probably most people won't see, but there is a degree of urgency, and sometimes when that's a real not everything is urgent, not everything is an emergency, but when there is an emergency, we need to know that, and I think that families need to take a deep breath sometimes and say, what level of emergency is this really, before they get themselves all tied up in knots and worked up about it.
I
Uh,
think that's where the families sometimes struggle though, because it is your loved one. So to you,
sure.
everything is emergent.
Yeah.
Maybe to us in the professional setting with the experience, that's not a level 10 emergency, but as a frustrated mother, sister, loved one of somebody else that isn't getting anywhere, that could be very emergent to them.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
I think to
you're
your
absolutely,
point
I
too,
mean,
that the squeaky wheel doesn't always get the grace. So if you're that kind of pain in the butt person that's calling all the time and kind of rude and not,
Yeah.
abrasive, people aren't always going to want to willingly work with you.
Yeah. Can
yeah.
I add
How,
one thing
how, how
to that?
much do I want to call somebody back that's just going to tear me a new one, you
Well,
know?
Yeah.
exactly. It's not on the top of anybody's list.
Right. Right. Go ahead, Sarah. Sorry.
So back to Stephanie, I'm glad that you brought that up, and back to your point, Michael, about being an ally with the workers. You know, it is gonna help you tremendously if you also point out the things that you're appreciative for that the worker's doing. So
Yes.
if you're only calling and saying you didn't do this, you didn't do that, why didn't you do this? Am I and just kind of like Stephanie said, kind of be in that pain. Um, People aren't they're not going to see you as a valuable member of the team. So you have to say, hey, thank you for doing that. Thank you will go a long way. Or, oh my God, I really appreciate, and I'm so thankful that you're kind of in this with us. So that kind of stuff will go a long way. I know we're late on time, but I'll give a perfect example. Yesterday, I had my car battery died. And I was so mean to the AAA person because they couldn't find my car and I was in a rush and I had a meeting. And like that was like not the approach because once I kind of calmed myself down and just, took a deep breath, he ended up giving me the battery for free under my warranty. And so again,
Hmm.
the squeaky wheel doesn't always get the grease. And sometimes a little kindness and a little understanding about, other people's
Yeah.
situation goes a long way.
You attract more bees with honey, Sarah.
Yes,
Yes, I was
you
just going to say
yeah.
that being personable and
But we
appreciative
all,
and
my
kind, it'll
my
get you
point,
further.
my point is we all follow it. We all get into it. So when you are in a crisis mode, it's hard to take a step back and say, okay, what am I grateful for who is helping me that I'm grateful for? But I feel like we need to do it.
I don't know, but I never get into those situations where I get
Oh,
Oh, yeah, never, I'm sure.
frustrated.
never,
Never.
never.
A couple of things I think that are low-hanging fruit right now that we can certainly offer to people. The old adage, if it's not written down, it didn't happen.
Yep.
When you have these situations, write it down, document it, and later on when you're having a conversation with the supervisor, or even when your case manager is back on a good day, hey, the other day, here's what happened, and let's talk about how to address this in the future. Sarah is wonderful at this. From the case manager's perspective, now looking toward a family, Sarah's really good at setting boundaries with clients. But sometimes I think that it's okay for clients and families to also say to a caseworker, you didn't call me back for 3 days. That's not cool. Okay. And so I think boundaries go both ways.
Yeah.
So write it down. Keep a log of it. And hey, if this keeps happening, Sarah's old adage, kick it up.
Use our
Send it up, Sarah.
carekeeper.
Send it up.
Michael, use our carekeeper. Our carekeeper is a wonderful resource for writing stuff down and keeping things
The
organized.
carekeeper journal.
Yeah.
Yeah, right,
There
right.
is a little trick I want to say sometimes I use when I'm about to call a supervisor. I'll leave like my last message for the case manager, whomever, and I'll just say, "Oh, I'm not sure if you're on vacation. I've been calling a couple times and I haven't gotten a return call, so I'm going to call so and so." And then I might give them a minute because normally when they get that call, they're going to call me back before I get to their supervisor. But also, I told you I'm calling in a confused, kind of nice way.
Yeah, backhanded sort of
Yeah, a little
passive
backhanded. Maybe
aggressive
you're
way,
out.
but
I don't know.
yeah. All right, so here's another one that Sarah and I learned very early on, and we talked about this, I think, in our very first episode of Holding It Together kind of podcast. Um, Very often our clients are involved with the probate court systems
Mhm.
because probate court typically has jurisdiction over guardianship, conservatorship, mental illness, no matter where you're living. If your loved one is involved in the mental health, in the probate court system, if they're not, maybe they should be. That's something to think about. If they are involved in the mental health system, chances are very good that somewhere along the way you may have forgotten about it or you may not have understood the relationship, but they have probably been appointed an attorney from the court. Or we know for a fact that there is a judge who is ultimately overseeing this case. The attorney that is appointed for your loved one is called the attorney for respondent typically. You could pick up the phone and call the clerk's office and say, "Hey, Cindy." Cindy was a clerk when I first started practice, and she was great. Hey, Cindy, what's the name of the guy that you appointed to represent my daughter? What's the attorney's name and phone number, please? Click, 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 click. They've got it. They give it to you. Next step, you call that attorney and you say, I am trying to do all I can to advocate for my daughter or my son or my husband or wife. I'm getting nowhere. And here's what's happening, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then leave it to the attorney for a respondent to come in and say, hey, I'm calling this social worker who's been on vacation, and we're not getting a response. I'm an attorney calling, I'm kicking it up. And not to toot my horn or to toot all of my brothers and sisters at the bar, but a lot of people do respond pretty quickly when they hear that there's an attorney calling. I
Mhm.
hate
Yeah.
to say it, don't use this all the time as a sledgehammer, but it does work. Sarah, you've seen this
Yeah.
multiple times with me.
Oh, I use it too as a professional. I say I'm calling on behalf of. So,
Yeah, right, right. Because a lot of the people we work with are attorneys who
right.
are acting in this role as well. So I'm calling on behalf of attorney so and so, or I've even gone as far as to say I'm a representative of such and such, the judge of probate here, if need be. And that's not a lie.
Mhm.
Frankly, when you're in big meetings with a lot of caregivers, a lot of times it's helpful for me as a lawyer to remind people that I have a different boss that I have to answer to here.
Mhm.
That is the judge, and if I go back and the judge doesn't like what he hears from me, he's going to want to know, and he's going to bring us all in front of him. Nobody wants to go in front of a judge. Um, so that's the one thing I call that like the probate court pivot because sometimes using the legal backbone, the legal back end of things, is just that. It's a way to backdoor some kind of action. But when does it get to that point? What do you think, Stephanie? When does it get to the point where maybe that's not even a good question, but do you have any sense of it?
For the families, like when does it get to that point?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how you answer because every case is probably so
It's
different.
probably every case is different. I think some
Yeah.
families have a higher threshold than others. I think the severity also depends. I've had family members that have gone years and years and years and years advocating for their loved one and probably had burnouts at points, but you wouldn't know because they're still working to get what they need to get for their person. But I think it's really dependent on each case and also how severe the client is. If you're getting to a point where it's really unsafe and the family members just can't care for that person anymore, maybe it takes that. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I think it's an unfair question because every case is so different. So I apologize, but I'm glad that you said what you did.
Yeah.
One last point that I want to make here before we finish up is that we talked about this idea of educating yourself and our own caregiver burnout, our own family burnout and running into walls. How many times am I going to run into the same wall before I just give up? And I had an interesting conversation with another woman that we know who also has a special needs child. She's involved with special needs work, and I had lunch with her, and I was asking, I have all these resources. I got all these tools. I got this podcast. I got this care navigator journal that we want people to take and these classes that we want people to take. And what's going on? I can't get anybody to raise their hand and take it. She looked across her salad and, just like looked at me. She's just exasperated. She's like, sometimes when I have a calm moment, I just want to have a calm moment. I need a
Mhm.
calm moment. I need to have a glass of wine and
Yeah.
chill out and not get more educated and not listen to a podcast about this stuff. And that's very, very fair, Sarah.
Yeah.
So I think, but I think that what this can also lead to is the apathy sometimes, falling into that pattern. I think that it could also lead into the reactive mode that we
Hmm.
want to avoid. So the best time to have a map is before you go into the woods. So I highly encourage you guys to educate yourselves, get coached, get trained, take advantage of the resources that we have to offer and other folks out there have to offer. Get the big word, Sarah mentioned it earlier. The big word is get proactive. Do
Hmm.
not stay in a reactive mindset.
Hmm.
Get proactive about this stuff. And yeah, when you have that downtime and you've had that glass of wine, hopefully the next morning you could wake yourself up and say, okay, shh, things are still quiet. Oh my goodness. Let me look into a couple of things. Make a checklist for yourself of things that you don't know. What do I need to know more about? These are just helpful little hints for you all to keep your mind fresh, keep you moving forward because we want this ball to constantly be moving forward. So, do you have any closing words of wisdom, Sarah, based upon our conversation today?
Well, I guess one of my you just kind of brought it up. Being proactive does not mean yelling the loudest or calling the most, or I think, educate yourself. And again, it may not be every day, but pick a quiet time, maybe in the morning, have your cup of coffee, get on your computer, make some phone calls, but educate yourself so that you can be the best advocate in your loved one's life.
Do you have anything, Steph?
I think educating yourself is important, but also focusing on that self-care too.
Yeah.
You're really not good to anybody else if you're not at your best. So giving yourself some time to yourself to wind down. You don't always have to be on the move and making calls and doing, and if you need to take that one night of calmness, that's okay as well.
Oh, absolutely. And I think somewhere in the middle of what you two have just said, I would also add that take a tool like the Care Navigator Journal. Take a tool like a letter of intent. Think about getting the photos together. Think about getting the video together that we talked about before. Because while this may feel unproductive, it's getting you in the mindset of being moving forward, right? Being productive. It may feel unproductive, but you're actually being productive because you're getting your mindset moving forward. It's like they say, one of the best things you could do every morning is to make your bed. It gets you in the mindset of accomplishing things. And I think that more than anything, that consistency, that commitment to accomplishment, is really what will make the difference between the squeaky wheel and the well-respected and accepted advocate.
Great.
Okay, thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Come again.
Okay, bye.
We certainly covered a lot of ground today. If there's one thing that's become clear, it's that the front door of our mental health system can appear to be an illusion, but I don't know that it necessarily is. We're talking about this no wrong door myth, the promise that basically says that you should always be welcome no matter what door you knock on. Even if you try to knock on 100 doors. We looked at the loop of despair where we just get stuck up in that referral carousel, leaving you wondering about whether you're ever going to get out of the maze. But let's also look at a different perspective. If you're sitting right now in your car listening to me, or your kitchen, you're hearing my voice, and you feel like you are alone because you weren't able to get through the door, you got to stop that recording in your brain. You have not failed. Lots of times the doors are locked. Today, we handed you some keys to figure out how to get through those locked doors. We're getting you away from being a visitor in your loved one's care and your family's care, frankly, to being and regaining some control and becoming a manager who is capable of demanding accountability. Sometimes that means escalating it up. Sometimes it means pushing back, getting the probate court system, attorneys involved. Sometimes it means reaching out, hiring somebody to help you, asking for a family or a loved one or somebody with a little bit more expertise to help you. Somebody who can do the heavy lifting when you're just too tired. You do have options, folks. But the system isn't going to fix itself. We know that. You're going to have to work and figure out how to make the system work within the parameters that you see as best. It is a machine. Sometimes, folks, you got to grab the gears and you turn them yourself. You got to educate yourself. I'm sorry. I do agree that there's time to have downtime, but you got to stay on top of it. You've got to become an advocate. And sometimes you got to look for the open window. You got to crawl into the basement if you have to. Get into that house any way you can. You got to understand and remember that the person that's waiting for you on the other side of the struggle, your son, your daughter, your spouse, they're worth breaking down every lock, right? I'm Michael Macniak. Don't just wait for the system to offer you a soft landing place. Sometimes we have to force a hole through that brick wall that seems like it's what's holding it together. Kinda. We'll see you next time.